Please welcome our next speaker, Miljan Milosavljević, a developer. Today, he will be presenting using extension tables versus related tables. Please stick around after Miljan's session for a live Q&A.
Hello today. My name is Miljan Milosavljević and I'm a BC developer. And thank you all for voting for my session and being able to present you this topic. The topic is whether a developer should use extension table or related table during the development. And if it happens along the way that you have any questions regarding the topics, you may make your questions in the live chat, and I will be glad to answer them in the session after. So what's the relatively common requirement that we meet with when we want to extend the Business Central in any way is to add a field on a certain document or a table. And in order to achieve that, the developer normally has to check what should I do in order to make it happen. And the official Microsoft documentation is pretty clear about that. The table extension. So it's understandable that each developer will go for it. And after deployment to production, sometimes it can happen that the customer calls and says that the system is slow. Why is that? There can be multiple reasons, mostly technical factors. It involves having multiple apps in the same table. And in the background, the SQL has to issue some queries, which are not always optimal. What does happen in the background when one uses the table extension is that aside from the table in the base app, the additional table is created, and SQL has to join those tables in order to show a single record. Pretty much often it can happen that all of the table fields are red, and occasionally the complete table scan is performed, meaning all of the records from the tables are read. And when all of the fields and records from tables are red, that can have a negative impact on a performance. Also, cloud solutions have normally the NST service and the SQL server are normally not on the same machine. Therefore, the SQL latency can make a significant difference when such an query on a SQL is issued. So what are the options when we want to add a field on a table? At the moment, I see three options, and we'll talk about what are the advantages or downsides of those approaches. The table extension, it's pretty straightforward. You need to create a table extension and page extension in order to achieve the goal. And the goal can be achieved in a matter of minutes. The other option, which is not that well described in documentation, but exists as an option, Microsoft does recommend it in their performance guidelines in the cases of entries. And that means that instead of allowing table extension to create a new table alongside with the base table, we might do it for ourselves. But with that structure, we could avoid having the implicit join on the SQL, and in some cases improve the performance. So for that purpose, we do need a bit more stuff to do. like creating a table object, page extension object, additional subscribers, additional code. And if we want to achieve the filtering in the same manner, we would need to create a flow field. And also there is always the option to do nothing or skip the development in total. Sometimes there is a better way to achieve the same goal and skip creating of a field. Let's now see what do we need for those approaches. For the official way and straightforward way, which most developers are familiar with, we don't have to do much. We just need to create a table extension saying which field will be added to the base table and to extend the sales card and the sales order. The result is pretty much straightforward. For the end user, that's pretty transparent. He doesn't know that in the background two tables exist, that SQL join are triggered, and he can do filter on a field, and the result is expected and fine until it can have a negative impact on performance. Let's switch to the related table and check out what do we need for this approach. I'll start with a table object, which may contain four fields in this case. One of them being the ID directing to the system ID of record in the base table. We might, but we don't have to have additional two fields, which are flow fields, and enable us to call the table directly and to know exactly to which record in the base table this related record is connected to. But as I said, those two are optional and have a purpose if anybody is going to run this table in the web client or open another page. And then we have the actual content, or better said, the field that we wanted to enable, which might also have some code in non-validated trigger. Along with the table being extended, the page has to be extended, or better said, the field has to be shown on the page. But as we don't have a field in the table itself, we are displaying the field from the global variable that we have added on the page. And and for that purpose, we have to fill the global variable with actual data. And you may see that we have an unvalidated trigger with which we want to propagate the code validation. So let's see how does that look. We need three functions: fetch record, in order to be able to fetch the record we want to display on the page. We have a code for deletion, because when the sales header is deleted, we do want the record in the related table to be deleted, which is implicitly the case with table extensions, but not with related table. And also for validation, we have additional code we have to write in order to propagate the validation to the field we are validating. So quite a bit more code already. And here is the deletion of the sales header. When we delete the sales header, it should trigger the deletion function, which deletes the record in the related table. And that's not all. In our particular case, when we post the sales order, normally all of the fields from the sales order are transferred to the sales invoice. Implicitly, because the posting routine does use something called transfer fields. And the transfer field is not available for related tables, of course. We have to take care of it using code. Here is the related table for sales invoice header containing ID of a sales invoice header, optional flow field, and the job number. And as we may want to show it on the page, we need to have a fetch record function and deletion if we delete the sales invoice. And of course, as it is a table, we have to have a function taking care of transferring the job node field in the related table of the sales header to the related table of a sales invoice header. And we have to trigger it at some point after the sales invoice header has been inserted. So quite a bit hassle just because of one field in comparison to table extensions. And of course, filtering does not work out of the box as the field is not directly accessible on the list. And for that purpose, we may use a flow field in order to enable the functionality of filtering on a page list. We can also then show it on the list as we did for table extension, basically. And the difference is that the flow field is calculated condition only when it's shown on the page, but the field from the table extension is always fetched. So there's a bit of difference in behavior, but the end result using the related table is, as you can see, the same when as compared to using table extension. Not much big of a difference actually. And let's compare those approaches. Table extensions do have a performance penalty. We'll talk about that a bit later. What does that mean? They are pretty easy to handle. No much knowledge needed for that purpose, and it's also less prone to bugs. Filtering just works out of the box. Easy referencing along the pages and objects, and page inspector can be used in order to inspect the recorded data. Related tables are a bit different. Sometimes they do have a better performance. They are harder to handle as we have to take care of multiple aspects for which the table extension took care already. Filtering can be simulated using the flow fields. Referencing along the pages and object is not that easy as it is with the table extensions. Page inspector does work with flow fields, but only if the flow field is shown on the page. And of course, if we skip development, meaning we skip adding the field, we have the best possible performance. It could be consulting intensive and often not a solution because the field is simply needed. Yes, and we have another tool in order to help us because we are considering related tables because of the performance aspect, in order to improve the performance, in order to avoid the joins. But there is one tool which has been introduced in Business Central in October 2020. It's called JIT-load, but the method itself is called SetLoadFields. And what does it do? This is an example from the Microsoft documentation site where we can see what is recommended usage. So if anybody is looping through items and interested in summing up the standard codes, which is actually not a good example because you can use call sounds probably for that purpose, we can load only the fields that we need, and therefore we could reduce the numbers of fields being read, but also avoid the joins if there is multiple table extensions and they have their own fields. We have directed the Business Central to load just the base table and not the other ones, which would otherwise use SQL join. SetLoadFields loads only selected fields, primary key and system fields, can avoid SQL joins and therefore improve performance. It's implicitly used on reports and data pages, which is really cool. But unfortunately, currently, it is not explicitly called on page. This is an error. Explicitly, what we have to have in mind is that although it's a really great tool, which I would recommend to use like always, it could improve performance in broader range of cases, and even if somebody decides to use related tables, SetLoadFields should be used. The problem with this command is that it's explicitly used on only 18 places in the whole base sub in the BC 18 version, where I checked. Which means if you would extend any entry table or whatever table actually, and the base app reads the data from this table, it will always load all of the fields. So you can use it in your apps, definitely. I would just wish that Microsoft use it a bit more in the base app, because the whole system would be more performant in that case. And for the purpose of comparison, what approach should we take? I have tested one scenario in which I have created 1 million records in a job ledger entry table. I have created 6 apps extending the job ledger entry, and I have tested the different scenarios and observed the performance of different approaches. I'll try to explain a little bit more in details what this table says to us. On the row, as the rows, we see table extension, related table with full table, related table with no records, and do nothing. Table extension is the approach which is recommended by Microsoft. Related table is the approach we could take. And we have an example when we have for each record in base table, we also have one record in related table. But related table does provide us with the possibility that we have no records for in a related table for a record in the base table. And let's start with the columns. What does the page means? Page is one normal list page, which shows all of the job entries, which meaning all of the million job ledger entries. And if we have created 6 apps extending the job ledger entry, we can look at the first column and see that the number of reads is highest for the table extension. It's around 4,000 reads compared to 1,000 reads for a related table and doing nothing. This page does not show any extended fields. This means that although the field is not shown on the page, using the approach of the table extension, all of the read count will be much higher, because the field in the extension table will still be read. It doesn't seem that incurs any problem, because the load is almost instant, and with 6 apps and that many records, it's still not a problem. If we, however, show the extended field on a page, we see that the performance for table extension does not change. Related table is better, somewhat better. The load is still instant. But if you don't have any records in the related table, the number of reads will be the same as when not having the extension field. But as I said, the page seems not to be a problem because it reads only part of the total records, on only one part of the total record count. What can incur more problem is the find set or fetching the records programmatically inside of the code. I mean, of course, pages could produce more problems if they have fat boxes, if like many more apps are extending the same table. So I have heard of cases of list taking 10 seconds to load in a cloud environment. But generally speaking, that's not a big issue, I would say. Find set plus filters on the base field. What does it mean? We are issuing the find set command, and we are filtering on some of the fields from the base table. Table extension obviously have millions of reads in this case, and the read in that context is the page reads on a SQL level. It's somewhat slower. It takes 11 seconds to load compared to 8. But what can make a difference is the sheer number of reads, and the difference can be even bigger when the SQL entities are bigger and when the database is bigger and number of records is even bigger. So it can make a bigger impact than it is in this picture. Related table, however, does not talk to the that data stored in the related table. Related table approach actually would read only the records from the base table because the field from the related table is not needed at all in this case. Going to the fourth column, which is named find set for filters on the base field plus JIT-load, tells us that using the JIT-load alone makes the performance a lot better than without it. It's comparable to the related table approach and to the approach where we do not do a thing. Going forward to the fifth column, which is called find set plus filters on extended fields, we see millions of reads in the table extension and related table where the table is full. When we don't have any records in the related table, then it's really fast as working without extension fields. And on the right, as the last column, we can see that the related table with full table is even worse in performance compared to the JIT-load. So when should we use and which approach should we use? This is only the recommendation because I think everybody needs to decide for himself how big the performance impact is. I think the best advice I could give is to test it on a live database with live data or at pilot customers, and then decide for yourself. Candidates for the table extensions are the tables where one can afford to read all records or all fields. I mean, of course, those are the setup tables, but also the tables like sales header where there are not that many sales order in the table, and tables where SetLoadFields can be used. So just to make clear, my advice is to use SetLoadFields in any case you can benefit from it, and only if the SetLoadFields does not make the adequate performance, think about using the related tables. And candidates for the related tables are therefore tables that are frequently read without SetLoadFields, tables that are often extended, and the best use case for related tables is actually when we would enter the data only for some of the records from the base table. Let's say we have 100 sales orders, but we have entered the data, we have entered a value in extension field for just one sales order. For that purpose, we wouldn't, I think the related table for that purpose is really better, because table extension would create for each of those 100 sales order a separate record in the table extension. So the best advice I would give, check for yourself what does sound the better. I can only say that the partner or the company I'm working for is in the process of publishing apps on the app source, and currently exclusively table extensions are used along in all apps. But prior to the publishing, we will certainly go through those tables and evaluate whether we could benefit from related tables. And I think in particular that related tables are suitable for entry tables, and that goes along with the Microsoft recommendation that they have on the guidelines regarding the performance. So I would at least advise on checking whether a table extension does bring a benefit on the table or on an entry table, if we really need a field on an entry table. And I must say that I got in touch with this topic probably a year ago. Along the way, some of the other colleagues, we can say colleagues, stumbled upon the same topic. Some of them were inspiration for me, definitely. And I wanted to list them in order that somebody can take a look what the findings of other colleagues was at some point. And those were Jan Kaufman, Stefano Di Miliani, and James Crowther. And the links are provided. If you're interested in seeing those examples that I have created in order to measure the number of reads, you can find them on the GitHub link that I have provided you with. And you can give feedback, of course. I think those could be used for own development, but also you can drop me a line if you see a room for improvement. Thank you for watching this session. If you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them in the live chat session. Thank you. Bye. Hello. I hope you liked the presentation. In the other room is my colleague Zoran, so he will be helping me if you would have any questions about the presentation. Have you looked on the questions maybe, Zoran?
Yeah, I have found some interesting questions. Maybe it is already explained to you by you that there are some use cases that are, from my perspective, interesting to see how would that work in real life. So when you have to, could you give a code example of how would you combine a filter on a standard field and a field on a related table field? So do you have some, so to say, out of the head example of how that in theory would work, and are there also a performance issue in the code that you would write there?
So the goal is to have a flow field, right?
To filter on one field that is in a table, so sales header, and one is in related table. So how would you filter that?
That's unfortunately no-go for related tables. Yeah, that's true. That's one of the downsides of this approach. I don't see it possible to be done.
Could a flow field be a solution or not?
Flow field? No, you mean flow filter or flow field?
Flow field on additional flow field on the related table, maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think not sure whether that was in presentation, but basically, in order to be able to filter on a sales order list, you have to create a flow field which is reading the field from a related table. So everything in regards to that topic, it's already on the GitHub. So if I missed to mention it on the presentation, you can download it and check it out, basically.
And what about filtering on a variable in code, which on sales header, which uses both fields from the sales header and the related? That is a no-go, as I understand.
Well, I think that's in this table that I just showed in previous slides. That's the case where you basically have the two tables and you want to filter on both fields, right? So that's the least performant, case of the related table, and that's where I think it really hurts. I mean, this approach with related table really hurts the performance. So if that's what's mostly going to be used, then I would skip the related table, use the extension table, and use a git load or git load.
Mm-hmm. Git load, yeah. So okay. How about this is a practically technical session. So basically, how is the licensing about using those related tables for the project? Does that increase the cost of development or for customer, for example?
Yes, simply said yes, because for the table extensions, no additional licenses have to be bought. But of course, related tables are standalone tables and therefore have to be paid for, especially for on-premise. But I mean, it's a trade-off, definitely. But when you compare the price of a table with the user experience waiting for a minute, for example, for a page to open, I don't think there is a dilemma. So it all depends basically on the on-prem. So I had experience with a customer that was really heavy. It had like hundreds or thousands of items, and when he was opening the items in the sales order, it was really a killer. So back then in on-premise days, we used the Vue for that. But on the cloud, it's a different topic. So I would say it just depends on the case. And I think if you're hurting from performance really good, I don't think the price of a table is an issue. Just in that case, no longer.
Okay. So our viewers had an interesting chat. That is that when the app is on App Source, and you basically do not know how many apps the client will install, and will he run into these problems? Are there some so to say head-ons that we can give the potential clients? What should they do or should not they do regarding the number of apps, or how they inspect whether they will run into different problems or not?
What I have seen is that customers that are on cloud are kind of keen to download the apps for themselves and just install them without thinking through whether this has any impact at all. So I would.
And why should they?
Yeah, why should they?
They have an option.
I would warn them definitely not to download like any app from the App Source if it's just because it's free or whatever. Because at least not in production environment for sandbox, sure. And I mean, of course, there is a dilemma because the App Source is actually, I mean, from my point of view, not something meant for vertical solutions. But if you have an app which is considered vertical, or you have many of them, I mean, you should be aware of it. So, yeah, it depends, you know, who is responsible for a customer, and he has a 6F from different manufacturers. CSP provider. I mean, it's not an easy, straightforward answer. Therefore, I would say to my customers, take care when you download the apps. And there are, of course, some of the painful places in code, like sales header, where everybody wants to extend it. So maybe even if you want to install the app, check with the manufacturer what areas did he extend and whether that collides with the apps that you might want to have from other manufacturers.
Okay, and now maybe from a developer perspective, do you see any potential tables that could be used with the related table solution that are so to say best candidates for that while preparing the solution? Do you see any tables?
Well, yeah. There are some tables, but it doesn't mean that everybody. I mean, let's put it this way. So if one company is producing a vertical solution, it doesn't count with the fact that somebody else will jump into that place. That's perfectly fine to use the table extension all over the place. There are, however, some tables which are often extended. Sales header for sure, sales line, that would be a candidate like always. But if you want to extend those two, sales header and sales line, that's where you will have the most pain from a developer's perspective in the what you have to cover. I mean, which aspects. There's also recreate sales header. There is also R-hire sales header. There is also, I mean, really a lot of scenarios you have to think of, and it's actually prone to bugs. But I think where it can be mostly safely used is entry tables, where you have millions of tables. I would say in the companies where there are many general ledger entries, for example, like millions, tens of millions, you could probably think about related tables. Sorry. And I have to take water. Just a second.
Okay. So there are a lot of thanks for this a little bit insight of how the table extensions and the related tables can be used both ways in the development, and what are the benefits of one approach or the others or the other. So also, do you see some other points when developers or should go for the related table solution?
Well, as I said, it doesn't sound as a quick answer that I can give. So it all depends. As I said, the first candidate for a related table would be, from my point of view, all of the entries. I see it, for example, for the project I'm working on, as a candidate for a job ledger entry, but for example, not for a general ledger entry, because we're not extending the table. And yeah, did I answer the question, or I missed something?
No, basically it. Do you have by any chance example where you have an API page for this framework?
No, but I think it sounds like it's less relevant for APIs, because APIs do use the buffer tables normally, at least. And the APIs are also, I think, OData, and I think it's implicitly already, SetLoadFields is implicitly already used. So it's already not that problematic, I would say. The most problematic point in Business Central with the table extension is that all of the posting routines, all of the processing units that call entries right now do not use git load, therefore are loading all of the fields. And if you add on top of that the table extension, you are making the standard routine even slower. And that's I think that's the main problem, actually. So that's the main problem I would like to, it would make sense to cover with the related tables. But the APIs, I think, are not really use case for related table. Because I mean, if you want to, if your API is for whatever reason slow, I would probably want to create a new buffer table using the one that Microsoft is already using, and the API is out of scope, I would say.
Also, there is one question. When you say entry tables, what do you really mean? Are those journals or the ledgers, or what?
Ledgers generally. Journals, I mean, generally speaking, who uses journals today? I mean, probably the financial people. But the journals, they are, I mean, the records in there are temporary. I mean, although you can have like really a lot of records in there, but they disappear after they have been posted. And I don't think they are like making much gain, actually, in this term of performance. So I would say, once again, entries and often extended tables like in sales area, for example.
Also another question about usage of a table extension versus related table solution. Do you think that these discussions of the performance will impact of table extension and performance impacts of the table extension will result in fewer developers using the table extensions, or will the new developers still try to use them due to convenience? So what are your thoughts on that? And experience, will experienced user see the potential of using related tables, or will they try to use the extension tables as new developers would also?
At this point, I would answer no. I do not expect, even for experienced developers, that they suddenly switch to related tables just because I gave one possible concept of it. I, however, think that Microsoft will do something about it in this area. They are doing, obviously, and they already did a big. They have a big impact just with SetLoadFields, of course. But I mean, from my experience, that's really a pain to develop related tables simply because of the complexity. It's bug prone. I think it will come to the. I mean, it also depends whether you're on-prem or SaaS. If you are on-prem, you can do more, obviously. But if you're in the cloud, I think it will come to this point when somebody really is being hurt with performance. That's obviously mostly the case. It's how to say, reactive approach to solving problems, that you solve the problems when they occur. What I would expect to see from Microsoft in the future is, I mean, they announced it, but not really. They haven't said that they will do it like for sure. But it could be that they do something about the pages, that at least you have the option to say that only the fields shown on the page are being loaded. And I could imagine that the base app is also being addressed, and the SetLoadFields is being, how to say, put on the right places in the base app. But I have the feeling that they are also having reactive response, meaning that they are looking at the telemetry, and then when they see somebody is being hurt, then they analyze it, and then they do something about it. That's my impression, at least. But for the moment, the base app is really untouched, mostly untouched with git load.
So you see that Microsoft recognizes this possible performance issue problem with the clients and using table extensions.
I'm pretty sure they're aware of it. They're aware of the problem that table extension is incurring. As a matter of fact, that's how I understood their project manager that came from the SQL world and asked somebody from Microsoft why did they introduce the table extension in the first place and why it has to be loaded on the pages at all. And the answer was, the decision was made, so they are not going back, that's for sure. And why they are currently loading all of the fields on the pages is, among other stuff, is also page inspector, zooming basically. So I'm pretty sure they will do something about it, but I'm not sure that they are like really, from my point of view, not so great a decision was made at some point, and it's not so easy to change it. So I think they will do anything they can do to improve the performance if they see the problem. But my impression is that they are not seeing it actually, at least, they are seeing it for the majority, but the minority is not something that will trigger them to do something radically.
Okay, so approach would be let's all use table extensions and make them resolve the issues later.
Well, the current state is, I that's my assumption also. I don't have a really insight, but I think that most of the apps on the App Store, on the app stores, are actually built with table extensions. And I don't think that will change. So I think we will live with the fact that we have a lot of cloud customers which are kind of slow. Some of them will migrate to on-prem. That's also happening. Not, as I said, not in majority of customers, because the majority is really happy with the cloud offering. But I heard from the York Street, for example, that his customers are mostly the customers at this point with the newest version that are migrating from the cloud to the on-prem. So I think we have to live with the fact. And if the question is whether I think this will change like suddenly on a 1 year time frame, I don't think so. I think we will just have the table extensions for a while, and we will have to live with the consequences. And we can, with related tables, we can just make a minor difference, so to say.
Yeah. And just maybe one final question that I have on top of my head, if we get some more from our viewers, do you see, as you were mentioning migration, do you see if a customer or developers or ISV get issues with that? Is there a straight-through path from moving the data from a table extension to related table?
Well, no, I haven't thought about that process, but that's correct. Actually, I gave thought about it, but I haven't been involved in such a scenario. But I could imagine somebody noticing the problems in some table because it has table extension, then obsoleting those fields and using the upgrade code unit which moves the data to the related table. And I could think that I could imagine that could bring performance. However, I'm not pretty sure whether the obsoleted fields are being read. I think they are. So in this case, it could be that you're easily stuck as soon as you have created the table extension. Stuck. You're not stuck if you haven't hit the the performance issue.
Yeah, but I'm talking if you hit the performance issue while moving the solution from table extension, but leaving the table extension and moving the code to related table and data, of course, will that improve performance? But okay, that's maybe.
Yeah. I will have to test it, but I can imagine that doesn't bring anything. But what we could do definitely, if that's the case, that the obsoleted fields are also being read, we could at least give that as an idea to Microsoft in order that I think that's something that they could address and to give them idea to not read always at least the fields which are obsoleted. Yeah, that could be a good topic for an idea.
Okay, any final advices for this topic to our viewers?
Well, no, I'm glad if I mean I don't expect this presentation to make a kind of revolutionary change in the world of table development, definitely. But I think since that's the world we're living in, we should probably think more about the performance and how our apps will perform in the cloud. And in that regards, yeah, I mean, take that material that you have on GitHub, play with it. If it works out for you, that's great. If it's not, that's also great. And yeah, that would be it. I mean, the point is, be aware of it. I think that's the biggest problem from my point of view. Most of the devs are completely unaware of how it works in the background, and that's also what cloud does. It hides a lot of stuff behind it. And the thing is, you don't have any control over it, at least not the direct control out of it. But indirectly, you might make a change. Yeah.
Okay, since we don't have any further questions, maybe we could wrap it up for this session. And thank everyone for watching and also exchanging their thoughts on this topic and performance topic also. And also to everyone, have a nice end of the day, evening, and following weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure what happens right now if we go out earlier, whether the it will be automatically transferred. But do you have any last questions, maybe, or that's it?
No, that's it from me.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for watching then, and talk to you some other time maybe. Bye.
Okay, bye.